You're either going to sit on the market or you're going to chase the market. Your number one asset is your home.
You shouldn't really count your equity in your house when it comes to retiring.
Buy a duplex. If you can live in half of it and rent out the other half. And these days you can Airbnb.
People have a tendency to wait too long for almost everything, right? They wait too long to buy or they wait too long to sell. So it goes both ways.
I've run into situations where you've got one person, they're ready to go, they're ready to list, they've got the information, and then you're all set, and then they go to tell their significant other and the other says no. They're not ready.
What advice would you give your younger self? What would it be? Welcome to today's PlanAssist Podcast, where we help people make better financial decisions by interviewing experts or people that are successful in particular areas. And we start all these podcasts off with the same question is, what advice would you give your younger self? And then, as many of you know, when we go through the podcast, it's built on 3 core principles: have a plan, be diversified, seek counsel. Now, we won't just force that into the conversation necessarily, but those of you who listen to PlanAssist podcasts in the past know those are kind of our 3 core principles that we'll probably touch on or fit into this podcast as we go. Today, I am super excited to have Brent Lawhon. He's a realtor here in Central Florida with EXP Realty. Brent spent years helping buyers, sellers, investors navigate the Orlando market. He specializes in residential, in vacation, and in investment properties. And beyond real estate, he's also the founder of Bright Journeys Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping make school field trips accessible to everyone, regardless of their financial life. So that'll be an interesting part of the podcast today. So we can touch on kind of both of those as we get into the conversation, is kind of real estate views and kind of what he sees out there from a real estate perspective. And then we'll touch on that real quickly, the Brighter Journeys Foundation. So with that, thank you and welcome, Brent.
Hey, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you having me on.
Before we get into it, did I miss anything as an introduction? Do you want to add anything to that?
Nope, it sounds great. I'm a co-founder of Brighter Journeys Foundation, and I'm in real estate and have been for some years. I've been in the Orlando market and lived here for 20 plus years.
An unusual thing about Brent is he's actually from Florida. So you meet lots of people that come into Florida, but finding a native Floridian is not as common as you think when you come to Florida. So.
Yeah, that's right. I rarely, meet somebody my age or older that is from Florida, but we're out there.
Yeah, exactly. And you said you grew up in West Palm Beach, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Cool.
man. Crazy I-95. Used to cross that over my skateboard and ride the bridge down.
I love that area. When I have visitors come down from up north, we'll go to Palm Beach and just go down and have lunch and drive around, see all the big houses and how the other half lives. I always enjoy that, and doing the Flagler Museum. So it's a fun part of Florida, right where you grew up.
Yeah, man.
So you've been in Orlando now since 98, so 20 plus years in Orlando. Kind of what drew you to real estate? So just kind of give us an overview of kind of your real estate passion and experience.
Well, yeah, when I was younger, I was in customer service, retail. I worked in salons and cosmetology industry, and that helped me learn a lot about working with people, working with individual guests, and really just getting to know, what the area has to provide. I mean, we were almost kids when we moved up here, and I was, I think, 19,
Uh-huh.
and we would go out every night and we would see the sights, and it was just a great place to live with regards to being young. It was safe, and it's also great for families. And so we've raised a family here. We have 4 kids, my wife Jennifer and I, and
Wow, good for you
yeah.
guys.
Yeah. Currently, we're living in Claremont, and that, obviously with ties to real estate, was a good choice. We got out here just before the pandemic. But what brought me to real estate is, back to my customer service experience, working with someone one-on-one to give them, the best experience and hopefully, help them experience their dream come true, especially in this area where we're close to Disney. A lot of folks have that desire to move to Florida. Everybody seems to want to get away from the cold up north.
Uh-huh.
And so knowing the area and enjoying working with people really is what brought me to real estate.
Now, I noticed when I was doing research, you've been in real estate for a long time. So when I was, prepping for talking to you, you also had some podcasts or some YouTube. I noticed you also had some YouTubes where you're
Mhm.
introducing some properties, et cetera. So, and it looked like you were with your wife. So you guys had a team. You still work together?
Yeah, we do. Currently, she's pursuing the Brighter Journeys Foundation full blast.
Okay.
She's the main founder and the driver of the foundation,
Oh, I
but
see.
she's still licensed and
License.
can help me and assist me at whenever I need. Yeah, we started the YouTube channel closer to the pandemic because it was it was something that I think draws people to the area, and we were able to get around a lot. Actually, it was pretty convenient because there wasn't anybody around, so we'd pop out to these locations and and give just give a great scene. And so,
Yeah, exactly.
uh, yeah.
So expand on, I have really some specific questions, but you can build on this. So I'll kind of get into for those of you listening, I'm in Winter Garden, which is literally next door to Claremont. So where Brent's at, we're sister cities. My question about Claremont specifically is I have just watched that. I've been down here 10 years and I've watched it grow dramatically. I mean, we ended up with a Costco, a Tesla, all the car dealerships, and now they're expanding on that Olympic Village down there on 27. Is that what it's called? Olympic Way or Health Way or whatever. Can you just give a
Yes.
summary of kind of what that is? Because that sounds like it's going to be like massive when it gets done. I know they're just have a few buildings there now, but
Yeah, they've got a lot of home builders right now out there. If you're looking for a new home or something that's very just recently built, Wellness Way
oh, that's what
is
it
uh,
is.
is the road, and that cuts over and around to Schofield, which connects to your 429. So you can take off of Highway 27, which is a main highway through Claremont and up into the Disney area, or even the Horizon West area
Uh-huh.
up into Avalon areas. And all of those are exploding with innovation, homes, new homes, and community.
So what's going to end up happening is Horizon West, which is kind of South Winter Garden. Is that right? Yeah. So
Hmm.
is going to connect to Healthways, right? That's all going to become one big group of homes, communities, connection, isn't it? I mean, when they get that road done, like now it's kind of separate, but as time goes, that'll just be one big, massive community.
Yeah, they're building the infrastructure for the expressway. The
Uh,
429 expressway will take you all the way and connect you into Highway 27 if you'd like. But when you get off, there's a lot of new communities, especially down here in Claremont, or over here in Claremont. And also, I've seen some golf communities up there as well, a little bit closer to the Winter Garden area, part
okay.
of Wellness Way. Mhm.
So why don't you give us a kind of an overview of what you just kind of see in the Orlando market, real estate market, kind of in a big picture, and then maybe even a little bit specific.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Orlando market is shifting. And so is, the market in general. Inventory is up. Homes are staying on the market longer, and more sellers are adjusting their prices. What it means is new opportunities for both sides, really. For the buyers, you have more homes to choose from, less competition, and better negotiating power. As well as, if you're waiting for the right time, this might be the time. We're entering a window of opportunity here. If you're a seller, the pricing strategically is key. Homes that are well priced, are going to sell quicker. What you don't want to do, you want to avoid is chasing the market, overpricing your home and chasing the price down. We've seen some of that. Whereas if you price it strategically and correctly, it'll sell in the appropriate, more appropriate time.
I've actually read where one of the biggest mistakes people make in real estate is overpricing because the people that would have been in that market early on, you miss that group. And they had the whole explanation seemed to make sense to me, but that's a hard one to not make.
Yeah, as a realtor, before we accept a listing, you want to go through some of the prices of homes that have sold
Right.
currently. opposed to, how, and, you might need to ask yourself, if you're a seller, well, how did I get to this price? I know that I want this price, but the market, as the realtor, will tell you basically whether that's acceptable or not. You're either going to sit on the market or you're going to chase the market. And so strategic planning and pricing is really key. When a home goes on the market, it has an energy about it. It's a new home on the market. So it hits. Every realtor in that criteria is notified in the area, and they'll take a look. But if it's overpriced, and that's the challenge that the buyers are, having, is that they're not, their buying power is not as strong as it has or could be in the future or has been in the past. And so that's kind of what we're seeing, is that sellers who price too high price themselves out of the market.
So what I see as a financial advisor, and then you can just build on this, is investing has this emotional aspect attached to it. And so when I've sold home, when I buy and sell stocks and investments and manage my 401k, I pretty much do that and inform my spouse. Okay. So she's part of it. So she's aware of it, but she's not actively involved in the decision process. When we sell, over the years, we've sold a handful of homes, and in that part, she's actively involved. Okay. And I can't tell you how difficult it is for her and I to get on the same page when it comes to selling a home. In fact, probably some of our biggest fights in our marriage over the 30 years is when we sell a home, because I'm a financial advisor. So I'm used to what's the market? And I'm used to being really honest about it because I can see it, right? I can go in and say, okay, if I'm buying or selling Intel, well, I know what the price of Intel is today. And so if I want to sell Intel's $33, I want to sell it at 40. Well, good luck. It's not $40. You can hold on to it and wait for it to get to 40 if it goes there, but it's not 40 today, right? Real estate is not quite as crisp, as clear, because you're looking at old data. You're not really looking at comps, even though they'll say they're comps because it's some generalization, but then there's always the specific aspects to that piece of property that you have, et cetera. So most of the people listening to this call, it's a financial call. So how do you help couples kind of get on the same page? I mean, or is that something you even bump into, right? Do you ever have one that's like, I want to sell it and get it done now, and another one's like, no, I want to sell it higher? How do you, what's your kind of view of that? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You tend to run into that problem a lot, no matter what you're selling. The more expensive I think it becomes, the more difficult it is, and the more important it is to have those two decision makers there. Usually there's one, but it's important to have both Bob and Mary there, Mr. and Mrs., because I've run into situations where you've got one person, they're ready to go, they're ready to list, they've got the information, and then you're all set, and then they go to tell their significant other, and the other says no, they're not ready. So it's important to get them on the same page from the beginning. And so when I meet someone new, I like to reach out and get a couple's phone call. Like, let's get us all on the same page, meet on Zoom, have a buyer broker strategy session. And you've got to do it with the husband and the wife, or the couple who are going to be investing, because that way everybody understands where we're at, and step by step. That seems to work the best.
Well, and it goes to kind of my three principles: is have a plan, be diversified, seek counsel. That's the part of have a plan. Like, okay, this real estate piece. And then the other thing on the diversification piece is the reason there's so much emotion attached to this, not so much the investment properties, because those people have a tendency to have some experience in that
Hmm.
and see it as such. But when they're selling their homes, they're almost, in fact, I saw an interesting stat where 18% of households in America are millionaires by net worth, okay, which I thought was extremely high, but that's basically the data going back. I think it was as of May or June, but 18% of households had a net worth of $1 million. But when you dug into those numbers, only about 3 or 4% of those households are millionaires minus their homes. So when you
Hmm.
take their homes out, it's a much smaller group of individuals. And so when they get to go and selling their homes, there's so much emotion attached to it that I can't even describe how imperative it is to go into it on the same page with your significant other and have a plan.
Yeah, exactly. When you live, well, when you're an investor, you understand your return on investment and you look at it as such. So when I'm working with someone who is investing, they're looking at numbers, they're looking at occupancy rather, and how they're going to be able to compete in the market. Whereas a residential is, of course, more of an emotional decision. I love this home. Have memories here. And so in that aspect, when you're selling residential, it's more of you're selling a feeling, an emotion, a dream. I recently put a contract on, we're waiting for it to close, a home that these folks saw us on YouTube. We connected. They are moving down from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, trying to escape the cold, and they want to be close to Disney
Okay.
and they have a limited budget. They want to retire down here. So you run into those situations where, they have a dream and they want to be close to the parks or close to Disney. So to find something like that is not only a challenge, but to make it work for them at the same time. Whereas on the other hand, I have an investor that is looking for a condo and it's about the numbers. How often are they going to have bookings? Am I going to be able to remodel? How much is it going to cost to do that? So it's a totally different mindset. And but back to the investment in your home and in your residence, you're correct. Is that we've been taught that you can invest. Your number one asset is your home, and that it's not only that, but it's an emotional thing. So when you sell, yeah, you get your investment back, but most of the time you have to roll it back into something else
That's right.
because it's your asset, and you also have to live in that asset at the same time.
So when I sit down with, I can't, I sometimes I'll get clients really sideways. They'll get wound up with me because when I do I sit down, obviously put together a plan, which is no different than for those of you listening. It's that when you put a plan together, it's like no different than you building a house. You want to have a CAD or an engineer kind of put some stuff in a software. I'll do that. That's not very emotional. It's just put the information in. Well, one of the things that I'll do is when I get to their home, I don't really include that in their net worth. And they're like, well, of course you have to include that. And I say, but you really can't because if you sell that house, you got to buy something else. And they'll say, well, I'll downgrade. And I say, okay, but I rarely see people downsize. I'll see people downsize from a 3,000 square foot home to a two, but they don't downsize money wise. They
Right.
move to a more expensive home. What I mean?
A
So
nicer neighborhood.
to a nicer neighborhood. That's what I tell them. I say, so you really want to be careful and be honest with yourself about what is your true net worth from a retirement perspective, because you're not going to be able to include the house equity in your retirement strategy because you have to have a place to live. Now, again, there are ways to do it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of strategies you get around that, but from just a simple kind of
Mhm.
oversimplifying the version is you shouldn't really count your equity in your house when it comes to retiring. You can count expenses versus income, and if you have your house paid off, obviously you have a lot of equity. But the big value to have your house paid off is you have no house payment.
Yeah, exactly. And you never really realize the your gains unless you actually stay in the home beyond, a certain point. 7 years, 10 years, should be, I mean, I've read should be the minimum that you should, sell your home in that time. And 7 to 10 years is when you've seen appreciation, you've seen gain on that home. But yet again, in order to avoid getting heavily taxed, you need to put it right back into something. And so if you're going to be leaving it to your family or, putting it in a trust, that's, kind of like the end game. But, it's interesting because I was thinking when you were asking, what advice would you give your former self or your younger self? And for me, it would be live somewhere and save your money and invest in the smallest rental that you can invest in and rent that out, and then from there, build a larger portfolio of rental homes, opposed to having, putting your money into your house and looking at that like an investment, just something that, back to that emotional versus, logical and financial, view of things. That's
That's
something
great.
that,
I made a big mistake. I forgot to ask you that question coming out of the gate. So if you were to give your younger self financial advice, that's what it would be, is buy rental or invest in real estate, but it'd be in rental property, not so much a
Mhm.
home.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, invest, save your money. If you want to invest in gold, invest in technologies,
Uh-huh.
newer technologies as well. AI is relatively new on the public scene per se, but if you could have invested in Google or not Yahoo, but you know, some of these technologies and companies, that's what I would say. But I'm not an investment manager, but I do know real estate. And so it would be start somewhere small with a rental,
Uh-huh.
or buy a duplex, if you can live in half of it and rent out the other half. And these days you can Airbnb, so that's something that I would, advise myself to do, now.
Yeah. The duplex idea is perfect because then you got them next door. You can learn to be a landlord. That is probably the safest way to go into a kind of a real estate strategy, is buy a duplex, live in one, and rent the other one. And then to finish the conversation on, because I know we're just kind of bumping around here, but I want to
Mhm.
finish the conversation on the home. What you do count, the home is not part of your financial plan or retirement plan. A home is actually part of an estate plan. That's really the best way to think of your house. So it's not that it's not
Mhm.
of value. It's definitely part of your net worth. It's definitely an important part of your financial plan, but it's actually part of the estate plan. Kind of, what are you going to leave to the children or to your loved ones, or however you want to do it. It's not necessarily equity or assets that you're going to utilize while you're alive, basically, because you got to live someplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
I would say my plans are, and I've encouraged my folks to do the same. We have a house up in North Carolina, is that, put it in a trust and keep it there,
yeah,
and you can
exactly.
pass it on in that way.
And it's easy to move around with the trust and trustees. You can change those out with relative ease. So let's go to the next kind of section of the conversation is what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see clients make when it comes to real estate?
Well, like I said, the from a buyer standpoint of view, let's just talk about Claremont. Okay,
Okay.
Claremont is the median price of home is around 440, 450, and the homes are selling in about around 38 days. Competition is real because I just saw just yesterday that Claremont was in this magazine, or in this news report, a number 11 in the nation of places that people want to live, or best places to live. That would mean that in Florida it's like the best place to live. And so, for a buyer, you want to avoid making this mistake of waiting too long, because more competition is going to come in when the market rebounds. Right now, we're at a lower or at a higher inventory. The interest rates have been a little bit on the higher side and are creeping down from what I've understand. And so timing is key. For sellers, what you want to do is price your house accordingly. Maybe if you can get it just above the market and have some offers or make some room for concessions. And so you want to avoid pricing yourself out of the market. Well, I mean, as far as our real estate goes, we've done exactly what you talked about. We've made sure that at an early age we've invested in a home, and it might have been just a two-bedroom. We went in on a new build because new home builders will give you a lot more benefits, and they'll give you help getting you into that home if you can just wait for it to be built. Sometimes people have to buy, and that's understandable. But one thing I would say to avoid is to wait too long. A lot of folks are like, well, I'm going to wait for the market to do this or do that. Well, it's all depending on confidence. How confident do you feel like the market isn't going to go back up? You know, and so they say, well, I want to see it go down. Well, we don't know, what could happen in the near future that could cause, the prices to start coming back up, or there'll be more competition.
But that's really good advice for people because I see that always in investments my whole career. People have a tendency to wait too long for almost everything, right? They wait too long to buy or they wait too long to sell. So it goes both ways. Like if you don't have to sell, then fine. You can put a little bit higher and go through a process. But most of the time when someone's putting their house up for sale, it's not oh, well, let's just see what happens. It's usually because they've been transferred. There's been a death in the family. There's a divorce. I mean, they have to sell it, right? So then price it accordingly, right? If you don't have to sell it, then okay, it's fine. Ask a little bit higher price and be honest with the real estate broker that you don't care if it sells or doesn't. But it goes to that. It goes to what you just said. And the timing is everything. And if you really want to get in a house and need to get into a house, waiting is not your friend sometimes.
Exactly. You want to avoid chasing the market because if your house has been sitting on the market for so many days, let's just say 100 days or even 200, people are going to look at that and go, well, it's going to cause doubt.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
why has
exactly.
it been sitting on the market for so long? They
What's
don't,
wrong?
and why did it exactly? What's wrong with it? Why did it start at, 600,000 and now it's down to 520? And now someone is in the position to be able to come through and make a low ball offer, and you might just have to take it because people have been looking at what's going on. Why are they moving this price down so much and skipping over it,
No,
especially when
that's
there's
right.
nine other homes in the neighborhood that are for sale.
And whatever the reason you're selling is starting to become more critical, right? I mean, so not only the selling of the house it becomes important, but I run into it with retirement accounts. So someone will say, okay, I'm investing this money. Okay, great. You're 40 years old. We can invest it long term. Market goes up and down, and we can keep the allocation accordingly. But if I have clients start talking about, by the way, I'm going to need to take some money out to pick whatever the issue is. I want to buy a car. I need to buy a second home in Florida. I need to do something. Well, then I need to get that money liquid or at least somewhat liquid so that when they actually do that, it's ready. And that's kind of my point. It's not so much about the market. It's more about make sure that you have money invested according to time and purpose is maybe a best way to word that. And a house is no different.
Right. And if you're working with someone, and from my perspective as a realtor, you want to find out, well, what's the most important,
Exactly.
to them? Is it time or is it money?
That's
And
right.
if it's and everyone's going to say it's money, but the fact is, do you need to sell now? Do you need to sell soon? Then we want to price it, to sell. Whereas overpricing it is going to cause you to, wait longer, and that's not a smart way to approach things. It's just
That's right.
chasing the market.
Exactly. So with that, why don't we spend a few minutes telling us a little bit about the foundation? So just a kind of a quick overview of that, and then we'll do some kind of final advice and counsel for closing.
Yep, sounds great. Brighter Journeys Foundation was founded just this past year. Actually, my wife was is a works for Valencia College, and she's a professor there, and so she's got a really great administrative background as well. And we kind of came to the thought how we could help kids go on field trips because just recently I took my son on field trip with the school and found out that there were kids left behind, and so finding out, well, what are they doing? And, how come they couldn't go to Universal? Universal's a big company, you would think, that we could work something out. Well, you know what it is? They don't, the ones that don't get to stay in the library. And I don't know about you, but that's punishment.
Yes,
And so it just kind of came to us. She's
that's
like, well,
awesome.
I could, why don't we start a nonprofit organization that will help these kids go on these field trips, and get that enrichment that they deserve. If it's a financial situation, then no one should have to be punished to, sit in the library all day while all your friends are having a good time at Universal. And so, being the overachiever and the go-getter that she is, she went full blast. And so we'll be around at quite a few events and community spots in Claremont. The holidays are coming up, so we're booking events. We'll put up a table and tent, and I just think it's a great idea because it's just it doesn't take much to send a kid on a field trip.
That is such a great idea. And I would have never even thought of that. And to your point, that is a big part of education. I mean, so missing out on that has a whole bunch of aspects attached to it, but also going is also such a positive experience because it teaches them all kinds of things, right? I mean, how to act in public, how to get in and out, all
Mhm.
those. I mean, there's just all, and then it's really not that expensive, right? I mean, you're talking a couple $100,
Yeah.
probably, right? What's a typical field trip? 200, 200,
Yeah,
300?
exactly. Between 1 and 200, if you're, and that's universal. They give a great price, but it still costs the parents and the student. And so if we can just send all of them,
No,
we
exactly.
will.
What a cool idea. I love that idea. That's fantastic. And then, so those of you who are interested, how would they donate or get involved if they're local? Just give the website some information on the foundation real quick.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
brighterjourneysfoundation.org.
great.
Brighterjourneysfoundation.org. And you
Okay,
can check it out. Donate, really easy.
so we kind of went around, we touched on a lot of stuff. So I appreciate you kind of doing it. Let's do kind of a summary of the stuff we touched on. So kind of having a plan when you get ready to sell your house and be honest about kind of, well, what's the time and purpose that you need that for. So that I think that's most important. And then just kind of what's the final summary that you would make as far as, people selling their homes knowing that it's an emotional aspect if it's a home. And then you did hit on, if it's an investment, that's a totally different view. And I find that to be absolutely true. So when I'm investing my money, it's a very different conversation with my significant other than, or with my wife than when we're buying and selling a house. It's just night and day difference, even though we're still talking money.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of inventory out there. And so if you are thinking about selling your home or, moving somewhere else and you're a seller, definitely do your due diligence and work with a realtor to, assess and analyze the market, price your house accordingly, and it will sell in a better time period. And you won't get any kind of negative attributes attributed to being on the market for a long time. If you're a buyer, you want to don't wait for pre-approval. You want to, because when you find that home, you want to be able to put the highest and best offer that you can. Don't wait for the market to change. If you can do it, that time, will come. And you don't always need 20%. Sometimes you can work out something too, and between 3 and 5%. And so if you've been saving for that 20% gain, it might be sooner than you think. You
Yeah.
might be ready.
That's awesome. That's a great way to finish. So with that, how do they connect to you? Give your kind of connections. I know we did the foundation, but real briefly.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm on Instagram at Lawhon, Lawhon, home agent, and YouTube, of course, Orlando's Best with Brent and Jennifer. And then we are on Facebook. That is Lawhon Home Team. And our website is realtyorlando.expportal.com.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks for the conversation today. I really appreciate it. It's nice meeting you on Zoom and getting an opportunity. Maybe we'll see each other, grab coffee sometime. I'm out in Claremont on and off.
Absolutely. Please reach out. Thank you for reaching out. I look
Will do.
forward to, meeting you in person and having some coffee.
That's awesome. Thanks again. Thanks, Brent. Have a
Yes,
great
sir.
day.
You too, sir.